session. Mr. Romano, could you please take roll?
Yes. Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
Mr. Patton.
Present.
5 present.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're looking, let's see, 4.01 to adopt the agenda. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
okay. Any discussion? Mr. Romano?
Mr. Patton at second.
Mr. Chumley.
Thank you. Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, recognition?
Okay, I'll take over from here. This is all about you guys. I know that being a board member can be one of those thankless jobs, but I just want to say that the decisions that you make, the investments that you bring to this school district is legacy work. And you each take that role very seriously. And so the theme this year of Ohio's School Board Appreciation Month has to do with giving a high five. So I have 5 things that I want to share about all of you that that make you an outstanding school board for our district. First of all, you are very passionate about this school district. Each of you kind of have your own story, your own journey, whether it's with your personal children or your own experiences. And that passion drives you, and you keep the students at the center of your decision-making based on that passion that you have for the district. When you talk about the district, there's such pride in your voice and your face. You are a caring and connected board member and team who gets involved in our school district. You are seen out in the public, you are visible, you are part of us, and that means a lot. You are a team that holds us and yourself to very high expectations. We know that excellence and kind of next leveling up is what's important to each of you, and you don't really mince words about that. You want progress, you want outcomes, and you hold a high bar, and I just think it's a great message for all of us and for our community. You also have a high standard for how you steward the money of the school district. That is vitally important to each of you, and you make a point of factoring that in every time. And what I want to celebrate, and you'll see here in a video in a second, just those investments that you have made this year really are allowing us to support our athletics programs in new ways, to really bolster our art program and our PE and our music. You've been able to help us expand the gifted programming for students and some more exploratory options for our youngest learners at the elementary schools. For us to be able to invest in the math course of study curriculum, these are things that decisions you have made are helping us to kind of change that student experience. You've been able to help support us in adding additional supports, whether it comes through an administrative support, a paraprofessional, or a resource support. We've had a different, better year because of the decisions that you've made. And you've also supported and really encouraged us in the WC Your Future range. You expect us to build partnerships with our community, and you celebrate when we do that. So we are grateful for you helping to support the investments in our school district. And then finally, one of the things that I value greatly is at every single meeting, you guys are celebrating. You are commenting on the great work that our staff is doing and that our students are doing. And I know it's part of our routine a bit, but I just don't know if you realize how much that means to all of us and how encouraging it is and how it keeps us continuing just to put one foot in front of the other. So as Dan is going to show you just a quick little video so you can see, it's the children's faces, it's our staff, as a way to say thank you to our board. No better way to do it than to show who we're all about. So you'll see that Mr. Chumley was the first board member mentioned on social media today, but each of you will get your moment on social media this week as we celebrate you. Our staff and some students, although it's been harder to get our hands on students recently, have created these thank yous for you over here. So please take time before you leave to see their nice comments and thank yous. There's some really big cards over there individually too, so if you can carry it out of here, Mr. Rudy, like you can take that home. And I just shared with you, it's a small little memento. You can open it if you would like. It's just a small token of our appreciation for you, and it's a reminder for like why we do what we do. So. And while you're doing that, just a special thank you to Mr. Ryle for creating that video and Mrs. Lucariella for gathering all these things, organizing it, and making some special treats and making sure that you guys know how much you're valued and how we would not be where we are today without you.
Now we go like this.
So it's a personalized calendar, all with West Clermont kiddos. That's awesome. So you can think about us every day of the year. We know you do.
Thank you.
Sure,
you.
we'll enjoy that.
There's nothing better than having this calendar. Our real job during the day doesn't allow us a lot of times, a lot of free time. And when you've got it hanging on the wall, you can just see the smiling kids and the teachers and the pictures throughout just really keeping them going.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
It's hard to have a bad day when you're looking at their faces, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So if you guys will join me in thanking and celebrating and giving our team a high five.
Okay, ready to move
You can move on.
on? Consent agenda? Do
Well,
I-
we have speaking at board meetings
Oh,
first,
speaking, I'm sorry.
but we don't have any
We
cards.
don't have any speakers? No speakers.
No cards.
Consent agenda, and I ask for
Motion.
motion. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay, and a second.
Second.
Mrs. Brinkman? Any discussion?
To go through the agenda.
We're gonna go through it now, so, we can get some, if you have just questions, you can ask along the way. It's up to you.
All right. Good evening, members of the board, Mrs. Adams, Mr. Romano. In front of you is the personnel agenda for January 24th, 2022. On the agenda today, we have the retirement of Brenda Dominski, our health clinic assistant at the high school. She has been with us for the last 15 years, so we wish her well in her retirement. We also have the resignation of a campus coordinator, health clinic assistant, paraprofessional aide. You will see Tiffany Sawyer's name on here again. We had already approved her resignation, but she changed the effective date, so we had to bring it back before the board. On the agenda is the proposed hiring of one special education teacher at Amelia Elementary, 6 full-time paraprofessional aides, a second shift custodian at the high school, 1 cafe worker, and 1 part-time paraprofessional aide. We also have the adjustment of a cafe worker who's moving into a full-time paraprofessional aide position, a second shift custodian moving to the head custodian position at Willowville, 1 part-time paraprofessional aide moving to a full-time aide. We have the proposed approval for supplemental contracts for committees, coaches, extracurricular clubs. Included in this agenda as well is requested unpaid leave of absences, the hiring of classified substitutes, multiple school volunteers. And finally, we have the proposed stipend list for approval for mentor teachers and our wellness committee, our wellness champions renewal for the 2022 school year. This concludes the review of the personnel agenda submission for your consideration. I would like to take a moment to mention one more thing. Further down the consent agenda, you'll be asked to give Mrs. Adams and Mr. Romano the authority to negotiate and execute agreements for services which will benefit our district. This is important because currently we are struggling to secure enough substitute teachers, given our current pay rate, to cover our openings, which causes teachers who come in to internal sub. And during that internal sub, it overtaxes our teachers, or it diminishes what we're able to offer our students on a daily basis. This authority will allow us to be more competitive with our surrounding districts and better support the best educational model possible at this time. So, thank you.
Item 7.02 is the approval of the minutes for the December 20th board meeting. Item 7.03 is request for approval of minutes for the January 6th organizational meeting. And item 7.04 is request for approval of the minutes for the January 8th board retreat. Item 7.05 are the donations. It's recommended to approve the following. At Clough Pike Elementary, they received a $100 Amazon gift card from Some Dog for Alicia Walls to purchase classroom supplies. Item 7.06 are the contracts. Recommendation to approve the resolution authorizing the superintendent and the treasurer to execute agreements for district services. As Mr. Foltz mentioned, the single request on this resolution is for those services with the Collaborative Solutions Council of Government. That is an agreement that has been longstanding in this district, and so we request that that authorization be provided, given the comments Mr. Foltz provided to us. Item 7.07 is the financial statements, bills paid list, and the investments. It's a recommendation to approve those statements. The attached files are the December 2021 fund summary, the general fund December comparison to the 5-year forecast, the general fund revenue for the month of December, the general fund expenditures by function, there's a position FTE by funding source, and the check register that lists the warrants drawn for the month of December. Also in the executive section are the monthly bank statements for us. So the consent agenda consists of items 7.01 through item 7.07, and we did have a motion by Mrs. Delaney and a second by Mrs. Brinkman for those items.
Any discussion?
Was our motion to adopt the agenda, or was it the approval of the agenda?
We had a motion to adopt the agenda, and this motion was for the approval of these items. The last motion was.
Is now the time where we could ask a couple questions?
Questions?
I'm looking at the full-time employee by funding source file. And some of the items that you have in red, you have listed as a decrease, but it actually is an increase.
Are you talking about on the treasurer's notes or on the personnel?
I'm sorry, the treasurer's notes, yeah.
Okay. The position FTE by funding source, is that the one?
Yep.
Okay.
And the question is,
Like the first item, you have it as a decrease, but in reality, from June 31st, or 30th through December 31st, it's an increase. You could look at it later.
I'm sorry, the question is,
She says that it's listed as an increase.
I think it's just,
It's a typo?
yeah, I think they're mistakes.
Yeah. If you wouldn't mind just taking a look at that to clean it up for next meeting.
let's see.
It's the FTE position source.
It may be because it was in red versus black. So which category are you questioning?
The first one, the assistant principals. Looks like we had 9.5, we now have 10, and you call that a half of FTE decrease?
I'm not too sure why that was there. I'll have to look into that,
Okay,
because there was a decrease there, but I
Thank
don't
you.
know why they did that.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I'd just like to wish success to Brenda Tominski. I worked with her for quite a few years. I know she's a go-getter, so she'll make good use of retirement. Anybody else?
Any other questions?
Roll call, please.
Yep. Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mr. Patton,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay. Item 8.01, superintendent's business.
Yeah, Mr. Overby is going to bring forward the second reading of policy for your approval.
Good evening, everyone. On tonight's agenda is item 8.01, the second reading of our general policy review. And tonight, there's two policies. Policy 2260, non-discrimination and access to equal education opportunity. That's more of a general housekeeping. We removed the names and kept the titles, so we don't have to bring the policy back each year. The second one is policy 5630.01. That was a rather extensive rewrite of the positive behavior intervention and supports and limited use of restraint and seclusion. And this policy change was in response to OAC and subsequent issuance by the Ohio Department of Education in both of those areas. So Neola brought that forward, and Mr. Dool reviewed that policy, and of course, we brought it to the committee as well. So the superintendent respectfully requests the approval of the proposed updates to the West Clermont Board of Education policy as presented.
Thank you. You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Chumley, the second.
Second.
Mrs. Delaney. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Patton,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
5 yes.
Item 8.02 is the district calendar approval for the 22-23 school year. Mr. Overby is also going to talk to you about that.
Okay. So per Ohio Revised Code and board policy, the board held a public meeting on the proposed 22-23 school calendar on December 20th of 2021. The superintendent brings forward the same school calendar discussed and reviewed in December. From a parent and student perspective, if approved, the first day of school is August 18th, and the last day is May 25th. The calendar also allows for a fall break, a 2-week winter break, a spring break, and we still are out before Memorial Day, which was something discussed. It also allows us for more professional learning on a predictable schedule throughout the school year. Lastly, I'd say that this was a collaborative effort with our administrative team, and both associations were, part of the process as well. And then we brought it forward to the board, like I said, in December, and to the public for public discussion. The superintendent respectfully requests the approval of the proposed school calendar for the 2022-2023 school year.
You've heard the motion. I'll put that, or you've heard the recommendation. I'll put that on the floor as a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Delaney. Any discussion?
I would just like to say thank you for bringing this forward a little sooner than later. There's been a lot of feedback from the community as they're trying to, plan their busy lives and make sure that they have their students ready to start school or plan their family vacations and things with ample time.
Yeah. We'll make sure it goes out a lot after this.
Yes.
Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Rahman?
Sure. Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
5 yes.
Thank you.
Then item 8.03 is the new high school courses and programs that Mrs. Lawson is going to bring forward.
Good evening, members of the board. I just wanted to start by saying what a great feeling it is to do work that you believe in with people that you enjoy. And I think that's a great segue into the hard work that so many voices and minds have put into what I'm presenting to you this evening. I won't get into all the details, which we've outlined for you as clearly and transparently as we can. But the programs and courses are designed to elevate the student experience. They reflect high student interest, community and career-connected learning, and they're designed to prepare kids for life and life success and career success beyond high school. So the superintendent recommends that you approve the new high school courses and programs as presented.
Okay, sorry, I was busy reading. You heard the recommendation. Is there a motion? Somebody to make a motion, should say.
So moved.
Okay, Okay, Mr. Chumley, a second.
I'll second.
Okay, Mrs. Brinkman, discussion? I would just like to say that it's very exciting to see all these different choices for the students. Really great.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Romano?
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Patton,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
5 yes.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Dr. Foltz coming back to give an enrollment update, item 8.04. This is something he did share with you at the retreat, so it's just key two pieces of information. But we wanted just to let you know that we continue to wrestle with this information and numbers as a team and use it for our future planning, so.
All right, thank you. So we've been using this the same online predictive enrollment tool over the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, that's good.
There we go. And you see, I have the names across the top. Initially, when we engaged in a partnership with them, it was called Decision Insight. It then morphed to Who Knew It, and then this past year, Power Schools Information Systems purchased it. And so what this enrollment prediction tool does is lets us know, looks at a variety of factors that feed into our community to give us some enrollment prediction on how many kids that we're expected to come into our district over the next 1 to 5 up to 10 years. It provides a conservative model and a moderate model projection. So the conservative is a little less than what we expect to show up. The moderate is a little bit more than what, so we fall in that happy medium there. We've been very fortunate. Decision Insight has projections in the past have always been between 1 to 2% of our actual enrollment since its inception with us. Last year, it went up to a 4%, but most of that was accredited to COVID and not knowing if kids were hanging out or coming differently or moving. However, what we noticed that even though it was within that 1% district-wide, there were pockets that fluctuated differently, which due to anticipated changes in the housing development plans. So if you look at the map to the left, that's the map of our district broken down by elementary attendance boundaries. And if you see the red polygons in each of those areas, those are dwellings that are either being built or on the books to be built. That will bring us more student. The prediction to bring us more students. So in December, we received the update for the 22-23 school year. So if you look at the table at the bottom right, I used our actual enrollment 12-18-21, which is the left row, and then put in what's predicted for 22-23. The difference between the two, and then out to the far right, it's the percent of the difference. So if you look at where we're at just using today's or December 18th's in actual enrollment, we're within 2.2%. So the 22-23 is built on that August, September predicted time. So we feel confident that this predictive tool is still falling within that 1 to 2% significant range. So that made us very happy.
Well, and one of the things that Mr. Romano and I are doing is connecting over the course of the next couple of weeks. We have some of these under our belt, but we're working with our township's administration as well as the county to make sure that our data and our polygons match what they believe is in the works. And there is a lot of excitement when we talk to these folks, as there's a lot of, you see it, construction going around in our community. Things are changing, things are moving, things are growing. And so we're just trying to make sure that we have the latest and greatest information so we can be prepared.
Right. And just this slide and the next slide, none of these numbers are showing, that I'm showing you today, include building-to-building transfers or open enrollments into our district. These are students that are or students that live within those attendance boundary areas. All right, so our next slide, we wanted to drill down a little deeper, K-5, to look at our elementaries. The left column I left in there on December 2021, that's where that column is there just as a reference. So I really wanted to draw everyone's attention to the 22-23 column because that's going to be our starting column. And then if you look at what that looks like 1 year out during 23-24 and then 2 years out at 24-25, I did a quick, what's our 2-year growth projection? If you look across the table there, Amelia is supposed to grow 68, Clough 21. Holly Hill has a negative growth, K-5, but that's also where we cluster our preschool. So that number, the preschool number isn't in there. Merwin is looking at 102, which is our largest growth during that period of time. Summerside 83, Willowville 45, WT 32, which puts us at a 2-year growth of 341, and then if you were to spell that out to the 5-year model, it's 720. So one of the ahas we had here was when I looked at the data this time last year, the 21 predicted model, and looked at what it looked like 22, 23, 24, 25, that 2-year projection was only at 179, not 341. And that 5-year projection was at 342, not 720. So we actually called the Who Knew It company and said, hey, these numbers are really, wicked one way or the other. So we asked them to do another dive back in. And they said this is the result of a couple things. So the table to the right are the additional dwellings that are coming into our communities have exploded. So last year at this time, we were only looking at 831, and now they're looking at 1769 over those next 3 years. So the dwellings are popping up everywhere, so that's one indication. The other one is that last year's predictions, although we looked at moderate, they kept it kind of conservative because of the COVID pandemic factor in their data. They put it in there, but what they found was our district recovered quicker than any other projections that they had. So the logarithm they used, they pulled back out because we recovered so quickly with that, and so what we see now is the recovery of that and the moderate to this year.
So like a summary statement, one would be, when we've used the Decision Insight data in the past, and it's now called Who Knew It or PowerSchool. Whatever the name of the product is it's been plus or minus 1% from the total numbers. But as we've talked about before, what's messy is where the numbers actually fall. That's where the unpredictability comes in. It's just never going to be perfect. So we still stand behind this data as a good tool for us to use in our planning, truly, because it served us well. We just had that COVID dip and the changes, and so we weren't sure how long we were going to stay down. But as Dr. Fultz said, we're rising right back up with our numbers. And so as we brought to you in the fall a plan that kind of showed you where we were before this new calculation was made, and we said we're going to need to look at things like space. And this can mean class sizes are going up, and we might need to consider redistricting. We might need to look at additional space, like all those things where it's unsure right now. We don't know. So this is the latest and greatest. This is from December, and what gets kind of blows my mind at times is you look at Holly Hill as an example, and you see a number of -10 going down over the course of the 2 years. At the same time, we know in our community the Duke pipeline is being put in, and we know where property could take off and development could be made is in Holly Hill, yet that projection is going down. So it makes you scratch your head a little bit. Then you see Merwin going up 102. That was not the original prediction when we were into this a couple of years ago. Merwin's growing at a more rapid rate than everywhere else. And so in Merwin this school year, we are using rooms that were designed to be libraries or rooms designed to be closets as small group learning spaces. We're making rooms into rooms, trying to make everything work. And with those numbers, that projection, something more significant is going to happen in the short term as we think about the longer plan for Merwin. So we've been researching and looking into things under the leadership of Chuck LaFata. And what he's going to do is he's bringing to you guys a proposal for modulars to be moving into Merwin for the next school year to deal with this overflow and the crowdedness that already exists now that would just be worsened with additional numbers like this. And so he'll be talking with each of you so that you can fully understand the plan. He's working with an architect. He's been working with companies just to kind of map out and decide the best orientation and configuration. He's been researching with the county to look at the permitting process and think through all the things that you need to with fire and safety and all that. And so he's done a tremendous amount of work, and we're just about ready to bring that to you at our next meeting. The tricky thing is always in these kinds of decision is the timing. So if we find that we need to make this decision and move this faster than the February 7th meeting, we may have to call a special meeting between now and then. We may be fine with the February 7th. That Mr. LaFata will be able to let us know, but that's just kind of a heads up that this is one of those, once you decide this is what you need, and once all the pieces are in place, you have to start moving because there's high demand for this kind of thing. So, just wanted to make you aware as we are watching these numbers and kind of planning for next year. So, were you wanting to add something, or? Oh, I thought you were waving at me. No, you weren't. You just moved. Okay. All right. Never mind then. Are there any other questions that you have about these projections or things that are to come? Okay. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Well, finally, item 8.05 are just my comments, and I want to begin by, once again, thanking our families, our staff, our administrators especially, for hanging in there for the last several weeks. January has been extremely, extremely difficult for us, and, we've kept you informed of what's going on, but it's just every variable that can be off, it feels like it has been off. And so, in dealing with absences, dealing with the common cold, the flu, plus COVID, staff shortages. When school districts surround us have to make different decisions and change their model, then that often affects our staff who might live in that community. And so we're just always playing who's on first. Maybe a daycare is shut down or a school is shut down. And so our staff shortages have certainly plagued us, and it's been hard to cover. So you voted earlier on a way to maybe incentivize subs to want to be with us and to make that a little more attractive. So we're hoping that will help. We've had to deal with contact tracing. It feels out of control. I would say in talking with the health commissioner the other day, I mean, she just said, like, this was kind of like with a punctuation point of, COVID is everywhere right now. Like they are so overwhelmed at in their workplace and what they're dealing with. And it's really because it's moving into that very contagious, less impactful kind of stage as it moves through the process of a pandemic. And so because of that, because of tracing to the levels that we're having to, we have been working with our ESC as superintendents to advocate to the state for to look at different COVID protocols and different rules, because it's untenable at this point. And so, and then our health commissioner is also advocating at ODH and all of that. What you can see coming across the way from, if you're looking at other countries, of the changes of their version of the Center for Disease Control are starting to look at COVID as in a different light, and they're beginning to change their status of what that means. And so that with that kind of change comes a lot of different rules. And so, and just puts COVID-19 out of a pandemic contact tracing place to more of, everyday maintenance like we do with when the flu season comes around annually. So you can see this happening in other countries. You can see that the top of the state, which has been ahead of us in the COVID surge with this last variant, Omicron, you're seeing that kind of stabilizing. We're just a couple weeks behind the northern part of the state. So you can see some hope that this is going to plateau and to settle in. And that's what we're hoping for. None of us have a crystal ball when it comes to COVID, and we're always being as proactive and as responsive as we possibly can. But we hope that there's end in sight, and just being able to take the pause that we did to keep people more away from each other for these past couple of days. We truly believe that it's going to help us to be able to stay consistently in and not have to do these surgical closures that we had to do leading up to it. So we're remaining very hopeful. And again, I just can't thank the staff enough, and our families, because it is hard to make a pivot, to make a change when life is so crazy as it is. And I have to say, we've got lots of, we have people obviously that were frustrated. There's no doubt about that. But I would say I would even have more responses of people just saying, thank you for what you're doing and feeling bad for us and all this stuff. So I think our community, I think, is wonderful. And I can't say enough good about it. And it did feel like we're in this together, but it doesn't mean that it makes it easy and that anybody's really happy. And you can see that as evidence. We just sent a survey out recently to get our kind of some climate data just to see how people are feeling, and people aren't feeling good about things, which isn't a huge surprise. So what we're going to do is follow up this week with a thought exchange just to get some more details to find out what the rocks are in people's shoes, so that we can continue to listen and to respond to those needs. And hopefully we'll just be moving forward, because about this time last year is when we were able to get into a pretty good place, so we're gonna keep our fingers crossed. Second, I wanna let you know with February State of the Schools, we were gonna have a special event, but with all that's going on, we think that that's gonna be, too big of a demand on what our system can handle right now. So what we'll do it's 2/22/22, is we will broadcast live from here and do the State of the School messaging, where the treasurer will be giving kind of a lay of the land when it comes to our finances. I'll be talking about our progress with our strategic plan and kind of talk about the challenge that we have ahead. Some of these things are things we're very certain about. Some of these things are very uncertain, and some things that maybe look bad could actually turn out to be really good for us, or vice versa. So we just want to make sure that everyone's kind of looking ahead over the horizon like we are. We will have a Partners in Education event where we honor and celebrate our partners in education for each school building and the district. And we'll have Love WC Week, so we'll be doing Spirit Week and celebrations, and just really trying to get through these winter blues with shout outs and positivity to really honor and bring awareness to the great things that are happening in the school district. So, and then another one of those things include a mailer in people's homes, because we want to continue to tell the message that we're a district on the rise, that yes, we have these challenges, and especially the month of January has been one big hurdle after another, but that we are working together to change the student experience, to partner with our community, and to make sure that we're improving outcomes for kids. And talked about Merwin. I think that's really it. Do you guys have any questions for me? Okay, thanks.
Okay, Treasurer's Business, Mr. Romano?
Okay, thank you. Just want to briefly, I'll do it briefly, kind of do the fiscal fitness minute, for us. The two things that I wanted to go over tonight real quickly was every month when we do the financials, we do that comparison to the 5-year forecast. That forecast is done twice a year. We did do that update. The board approved that update in November. And so just briefly, I do have this online for you to do that, but let me get the right one there. Sooner or later. And I know that's hard to see that you can't see it, but the two big messages with that comparison with the forecast is, are we on track or off track as our revenues come in? December is 50% of the way through the year. I think, as you know, and we talked about in previous meetings, our local property tax, we get the bulk of that, through August, early September, that comes in. So for the most part, we hit 50% back in August and September for the local property taxes. The state foundation is kind of even through the year. Because this year we had that change in the school funding, December and January is when the state was putting in the new formula. In January, you'll see when we do this next month that in January, there's kind of some adjustments that were made. Recall that with the funding formula change is that the certain expenses that used to be passed through, where we would get the money from the state for charter schools, for the Ed Choice vouchers, for open enrollment, those go away. Okay, and so we see that new formula really is going to come into play in January. On the expense side, the two big numbers that we look at are wages and benefits numbers. We are a hair under 50% as we get through December. That's kind of where we want to be. With that, I think we're at 49% through December. So with our revenue and expenses, with comparing it to the 5-year forecast that's in November, we're really on track with it to do it. If you'll recall last year at this time period in January is our low point because it's right before we get our property taxes. The bills did go out. We've been in conversation with the county auditor's office. We are looking for that the first advance in settlement before the end of January, if not the first week of February. And that's usually kind of the first advance, the way this county does it, is a pretty big advance. It's probably about 70–80% of what that whole first half settlement is. So we're expecting that. December, January is a low point. Last year we had to do a tax anticipation note to get us through that. okay? We do not have to do that this year, but it still gets kind of that low point for us to do it. What I did want to show you, and the second thing that I kind of want to go through, is we do in January, sometimes in December, but we do get from the county auditor the property valuations and the tax rates. So every year, the county auditor, takes the property values, they have to submit it to the state Department of Taxation. There's a process where they go back and forth to set the effective rates to do that. As you know, one of the key elements of our 5-year forecast and our revenue projections is local property taxes. And within this district, we are becoming more dependent upon local property taxes, the way the new formula works. Probably in the past, the formula overshadowed that. You've heard me say before, and you've seen in some presentations, where there's a shift going on. We were kind of equal partners in the past of local property taxes and state funding. I think it was like a 52-48 split. That's going to be growing. Within the next several years, there's going to be a kind of a 10% swing to 63%, down to under 40% on that share with it. I'm not going to go through these 3 slides. You have that available to you. What I want to make sure you understand is we did go through our due diligence to make sure that the rates that were assessed are correct. That is, we don't rely solely upon the county auditor. We don't rely solely upon the Department of Taxation. We go through a process where we look at the valuations, we look at those tax rates, and we want to make sure that they're correct as we do it. The process I go through doing that is actually go through the calculations with it. So, again, not going to go through these 3 slides, but I'm going to get to the last one, to the summary slide, because what I do is compare last year, the 20 rates and valuations collected in 21 to the projected 21 rates and valuations collected in 22. And as we go through and do that comparison, we believe the rates are correct. We believe, one of the things that we questioned in the past was the calculation of the emergency rates. We believe that those are correct. Part of knowing they're correct is because we do get some gain in the substitute emergency levy. That is coming through. But the 2 big things that I noticed, in here what's going on is we had our triennial update our sexennial update in 2020. That was where we had the big valuation increase, okay? In 21 and 22, we're not going to see any big valuation increases at all. In fact, what you see here is that, and it's normal, it happens is after a reappraisal year, you'll see commercial industrial property go down, and it did. It went down slightly, okay, with that. Our residential property did go up to make up for that. On the emergency levies, the calculation is such that we're hitting those numbers. So we are collecting the dollar amounts that the way the community voted, that we get those dollars, we are collecting those. For the calendar year, there's about a $700,000 increase over the previous year, okay? That was projected, okay? We will probably get about $300,000 of that this year before June 30th, the remainder after June 30th to do that. So, long story really to get to the short tagline is we're on track. The valuations and the tax rates, we did go through, make sure that they are correct. We'll feed that stuff into our forecast to see what other impacts we have. As I see those, and I know it's only a month or 2 after we approved it in November, it is validating the rates that we put in our forecast to do that. So we're on track with that, okay? If you look at that and you have any questions, let me know. I don't mean to be complicated with it, but to give you kind of the top line with it. So that's there.
Can you answer a question on page 7? It looks like we're well ahead of budget or forecast for purchase services and supplies.
On
Page 7?
So are you looking at the expense? No.
Maybe it's my,
That.
yep,
Right there?
yep.
So on that, we're on purchase services and supplies. The majority of that does get spent in the beginning of the year, so you're buying supplies and services for that year with it. You'll see that the encumbrances are higher than normal, and what happens there is at the end of December, they start doing purchase orders for the remainder of the year, so we've got some double purchase orders in there on the encumbrances for purchase services and supplies with it. But by the end of the year, we'll be within the budgeted amounts for those. So it looks like we're ahead on those two line items, but by some of the encumbrances or purchase orders being canceled out that were really ended in December, that will balance itself out, so those will come down. So they are ahead on the expense side, but through the remainder of the year, we do spend more up front in the first 6 months than we do the back to do that. That's good to notice that. Okay, with that. Just two notes real quickly. The superintendent mentioned about the modulars. We do have funds in the permanent improvement fund. That's the right source to purchase the modulars. It's capital expense to do that. You'll recall that our permanent improvement fund, those funds are really used to pay for the debt for the high school. And because of the valuation in collected in 21 was higher than expected, there are some excess funds in there to do that. So we do have that covered, okay, to purchase those modular units for Merwin to do that. They'll be out of the permanent improvement fund when that does come in front of the board. Second thing is, it was a great experience for me to be on the calls with the superintendent to those overlapping jurisdictions, the townships and the county. There was absolutely no pushback on the growth that's coming. I thought I would hear some sort of hesitation on it, but there was none. I mean, it was almost, be prepared for it. And that's really talking about the residential growth to do that. So, I think it's great that we're doing our due diligence to proof those numbers and to make sure that's there. In the capital funding world of buildings, modulars, and things we need to do, 1, 2, 3 years is not a long time. Okay, it's a short time to get some things done, so that's there. The last thing is, just in tune with the superintendent, I do want to thank the board for their role. If I were to add one thing to the high five, my experience with this board collectively over the 2 years is that you do operate as a team. Within that team fashion, I know I feel comfortable, I'm sure the administrators here feel comfortable, that it's really important that you have our back. And I feel very comfortable with that, so I thank you for that. That doesn't mean you take things for granted, because you don't. Example, the question, the questioning attitude is a good thing, not to let things slip by. So we do appreciate that. But, from my standpoint, for the number of decades I've been in school business, it is great to have a Board of Education that has your back. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
That's it. Okay. Board business. Mrs. Brinkman, you want to start?
Sure. A couple things. Last year, our athletic department did such a good job of hosting the Division I basketball tournament that the state awarded that back to our district. So we're going to be privileged to have those athletes back on campus enjoying the facilities that we have to offer for our students. And the kids from the other schools last year were so excited to be there that they had no idea that it was so nice that they're going to be surprised to come back and see it as well kept and more organized than we were last year. The other thing is the athletic department is beginning the planning for their biggest fundraiser of the year, the How at the Moon Booster Dance, the last Friday of March. So they're looking for volunteers to help, they're looking for donations, and they're looking for people to support them by buying tickets. So if you're interested, I'm sure if you Google and look at the athletic boosters, you'll find the invitation and the details associated with that. Other than that, that's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Chumley?
Yeah, as Ms. Adams pointed to, it's been a rough month. Seems like when one of my children is back on a normal schedule, the other one's back home, so it's just constant adjusting. We're through the fun cold phase, now we're in like the miserable cold phase. But I think our Bengals are gonna pull us out of this slump. So, looking forward to Sunday, Who Day. I thank you guys for all the kind words, and I'm looking forward to reading my mega card.
You think it's cold here? I'm heading to Cleveland tomorrow.
That's miserable anytime.
Yeah,
of year.
they just got 14 inches of snow.
Thanks for that reminder.
Mr. Patton?
I too want to thank everyone for the kind words and welcoming me to the new board, or to the board, I should say. I do appreciate the community's support, as well as all of the staff, as we do try to maneuver through this, some hard times that we're having with all of this. I just appreciate it, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Mrs. Delaney?
Also, to add to Mrs. Brinkman's shout out for the athletic boosters, that event is also the Hall of Fame event, so it's an exciting way to bring our past and our present together, because there will be recognition from a graduate from Amelia, or men and women from Amelia High School and from Glen Essie High School at that event too. So it's fun to bring everybody together for the united cause. Thank you to everyone for the kudos. I love my job as a board member. I really do. People think I'm nuts, but it's. I think I should have been in education instead of in pharmacy, so I find a lot more gratification in it some days. But I'm privileged to serve. I just wanted to share a little story. I volunteer at the high school, for the high school diving program, and last year, because of COVID, there were no spectators at those events, swim or dive. And because of the resourcefulness that the coaching staff had, we were able to live stream through Facebook the diving meets and the swim meets for our parents and their families. And here we are, it's 2021, 2022, we're in the middle of the season, and we have spectators coming in from everywhere. They're from Dayton, they're from all over Cincinnati, and they are thanking the volunteer staff for everything that we did to make it possible for them to observe their student athlete last year. And now we're still doing that, and it's allowing grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles who live in other states. So technology, while it can be a hindrance to us, has definitely been something that we have engaged, and we're reaping the benefits of it. So the things that we are doing may be small, but others outside of our community are recognizing that West Clermont is going above and beyond to make a difference in their lives. And otherwise, stay warm and just keep going on going.
I would just like to thank everyone in the district for their perseverance, all the adults and students in these troubled times we are having. And I would like to also thank you for this beautiful calendar. I don't think I can take it to Bethel, though. It might get annihilated. So I'll keep it at home. And all of these nice words up there, very exciting. So thank you all. Okay, anybody else? Do we have need for executive session? No? Okay, our next meeting is February 7th. That is a business meeting work session at 6, followed by February 22nd business meeting, that's a Tuesday at 7. And that could, we could start earlier, possibly.
Well, if we have executive session.
Yeah, okay. Okay, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Chumley, a second.
Second it.
Mr. Patton, discussion? Okay, Mr. Romano?
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mr. Patton,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Yes.
5 yes. We're adjourned.